short of sending American troops or NATO troops into the Ukraine, it's not clear to me that the Ukrainians will ultimately prevail. And therefore, what's the best way to work an arrangement that saves lives and ends the conflict?
Donald Trump will once again reshape global foreign policy, and it's fair to say he had a pretty frosty relationship with European allies and NATO partners in the past. During his first term, we saw disagreements with Theresa May, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and French President Emmanuel Macron, to name a few. So we thought it's a great opportunity to open up the archive and put Adam's brain to the test.
Yes, the President-elect Donald Trump is going to take office in January. So let's look at some of his previous relationships with European allies. Joining me now is Ronald Gitwitz, who was Donald Trump's ambassador to the European Union from 2020 to 2021. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good to talk to you.
Well, let's start with, probably the most famous declaration of European policy made by Donald Trump when he spoke to NBC's Chuck Todd and suggested that US defensive support would be contingent on NATO nations paying up.
We have NATO, and we have many countries that aren't paying for what they're supposed to be paying, which is already too little. But they're not paying anyway. And we're giving them a free ride, or we're giving them a ride where they owe us tremendous amounts of money. And they have the money, but they're not paying it. You know why? Because they think we're stupid.
So Estonia is paying. And if they get invaded by Russia, you're there?
I feel differently.
Okay.
I feel very differently.
But if a country's not doing, Britain hasn't done the 2%.
We have countries that aren't paying. And now this goes beyond NATO because we take care of Japan, we take care of Germany, we take care of South Korea, we take care of Saudi Arabia. And we lose on everything. So all I'm saying is they have to pay. Now, a country gets invaded. They haven't paid. Everyone said, oh, but we have a treaty. Well, they have a treaty too. They're supposed to be paying. We have countries within NATO that are taking advantage of us. With me, I believe they're going to pay. And when they pay, I'm a big believer in NATO.
Ambassador Gitwitz, what did you think of that approach, very transactional approach to NATO membership?
Well, I'm not sure it's so transactional. If you go back and look at history, in 2014, the NATO met in Wales, and everyone agreed that they would put 2% of their GDP into defense, and 20% of that would be spent on hardware, and it would be completed by the year 2020. Now, President Trump is a very transactional person. But the reality is that a deal was made and a deal was not kept. I mean, our friends north of our border in Canada feel pretty good about the fact that they might make that 2020 agreement sometime in 2029. What kind of a partnership is it when your partners aren't fulfilling their side of the bargain?
Should be said the UK is now above 2% and has, as we just heard, made a commitment to 2.5%. But Donald Trump in 2018, he seemed to enjoy personal argument to a certain extent with some European leaders. He said about the French president, Emmanuel Macron, that he suggests building its own army to protect Europe against the US, China and Russia. But it was Germany in World Wars I and II. How did that work out for France? They were starting to learn German in Paris before the US came along. And then he also took aim at Chancellor Merkel of Germany, accusing the Germans of opening the doors to Russia.
I have to say, I think it's very sad when Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia, where you're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. So we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries, and then numerous of the countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia, where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia.
I mean, Ambassador, you don't get the impression that Donald Trump really likes Germany or France very much.
Well, I think he's irritated with some of the transactions that were taking place, and I think rightly so. If you think about the Nord Stream 2 deal, or Nord Stream 1 for that matter, the Germans had a very, very favorable natural gas price from Russia. At the same time, they were shipping cars that were manufactured using that natural gas on a very favorable arrangement to the United States. it was not a balanced transaction, and I think it irritated the president, and I believe rightly so.
And there he is taking a hostile attitude to relations with Russia, although he's had his own contacts with President Putin. And now he says that he's going to end Russia's war in Ukraine in a day.
Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, I will have the disastrous war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It will be settled quickly. I will get the problem solved, and I will get it solved in rapid order, and it will take me no longer than one day. I know exactly what to say to each of them. I got along very well with them.
But European leaders have been preparing to give more support, perhaps, to Ukraine because of the arrival of President Trump. This was speaking last week at the European Political Community in Budapest, what the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, had to say.
Supporting Ukraine in this fight against Russia is crucial for our collective safety here in this part of Europe, in Canada, in the United States, all over NATO territory. Because if Putin would get his way in Ukraine, that will mean a serious security implication, for all of us in NATO. And that is why we are in this. Yes, for Ukraine, but also to make sure that we stay safe.
So, Ambassador, what do you think Donald Trump is going to do about the conflict in Ukraine?
Well, first of all, I don't speak for the incoming administration, so this is just my own personal opinion.
Yes, indeed.
But the reality is that President Trump would like to see a greater level of responsibility taken by the Europeans. And while I have some degree of skepticism as to whether or not he'll be able to settle the conflict in a day, having the Europeans take a greater role in what's taking place today is a good thing. And my guess is there'll be significant American support between now and January 20th, when President Trump takes office, and then we'll see. I am hopeful that a favorable resolution to the Ukrainian people takes place.
But do you think, would it not be a major setback for the United States and its global posture if unprovoked aggression by Russia results in Russia making territorial gains and perhaps even imposing its own political neutrality, if you like, on Ukraine? Could Trump sell that?
I think one of the difficulties that exist here is that, short of sending American troops or NATO troops into the Ukraine, it's not clear to me that the Ukrainians will ultimately prevail. And therefore, what's the best way to work an arrangement that saves lives and ends the conflict?
Ambassador Gitwitz, thank you very much indeed for joining us.